Chapter 26. The Return of a King. The two brothers stood face to face in the tent of the king. Cushite guards stood by the entrance. Outside could be heard the voice of the herald crying endlessly, "Taharka, son of the sun, child of the hawk, lord of Cush, great god of Napata and Meroe, Pharaoh of Egypt, he has returned." "So Pharaoh has returned," said Shabbataka. "Well, Hari, what will it be? The strangler's rope? The fire? The stake?" Taharka closed his eyes. "Mbuta, you killed him. You tried to kill me." "Him? Yes, he made me crawl. You? No, not before today." He smiled suddenly. "A funny thing. I liked you. At first, I even tried to help you." And he had. Taharka remembered. "No, no, no, that's not what I meant. You don't obey the sun priest. He obeys you. But I know now I would have killed you. Sooner or later, it would have had to be done. Not before today. The taster, that first sly evil attempt, it had been the Assyrians. For some reason Taharka was glad. And suddenly he knew what he was going to do. His eyes were as hard and sure as his brother's. He motioned to the soldiers. Shabbataka was again surrounded. He watched his brother, still smiling. "The robe," said Taharka. Shabbataka's smile faded. Slowly he slid the leopard skin from his shoulders. He threw it to his brother. "The gold," said Taharka. They fell in a clanking heap at Shabbataka's feet. The rings, the armbands, the collar of gold, the crown of the two lands. He took it from his brother's hands. He looked at it for a moment. It was his now, by his own choice, the choice of the army and the choice of the gods. Taharka set it upon his head. He held out his shepherd's cloak. "Put it on." Then, to the commander of the soldiers, the man who had spoken to the people, "Appoint trusted men, send him under guard in all secrecy to the land of the Somalis. There give him money and food and set him free. Forgive me, Mbuta. He's my brother." Besides, he owed the God of Amos an act of mercy. He who had been spared with the people of Jerusalem. And to Shabbataka, "If ever again you cross into Nile country, your life is forfeit." Taharka was not a fool. Neither was Shabbataka. His brother was the army's choice. Who of his mother's tribesmen could stand against Egypt? It was over. At that moment he would have preferred the sentence of death. One last time he spoke to the son of his father. "You begin to sound like a king, my brother. Maybe some day you will learn to be one." One last time he was the experienced older brother in the garden with the lotus pool. "You had better learn quickly. They'll be back, you know, the Assyrians. Maybe not too soon, but they'll be back." Impatient now, the guards thrust him out into the open. Taharka could no longer see his face. For the last time he heard his voice. "Use the time you have, little brother. Use it well." Taharka stood in Pharaoh's royal chariot, the leopard skin hanging from his shoulders. He would ride through the camp, would be proclaimed God King of the two lands. Soon he would be back in Thebes. Yes, Shepneset, I will return. There would be times through the years when they would be together. He was the god and she was the priestess. They would manage that. Shabbataka? He would not have them cut out his name from the statues. He would not remove it from the books of the priests. After all, he himself had not really been king until today. Today, when he had chosen and been chosen, he would let his brother have his due. Amos stood by the chariot. He motioned to the herald. "Ride with Pharaoh through the camp. Proclaim the true king." Taharka held out his hand. "Amos, come." But Amos shook his head. This was the chariot of the king. Amos was withdrawing from him. With head bowed, the envoy from Judah stood before the king of Egypt and Cush. He would never come to him again as a friend, only as an ambassador to a king. Then, as the charioteer gathered up the reins, he raised his head and smiled. And Taharka knew that Amos would remember the curtain rope and Hezekiah's tunnel, how they had stood together against the Assyrians. Whether or not they ever met again, they would always be friends. Taharka reached out his arm. Their hands came together in one strong fist. Then the chariot moved out. "Behold, Taharka, son of the sun, child of the hawk, lord of Cush, great god of Napata, and Meroe, Pharaoh of Egypt," endlessly throughout the camp. Once Taharka smiled, almost laughed. On the outskirts of the encampment were the tents of the Mukri. They had followed the Cushites, hoping for a chance at the Assyrians, a chance to avenge their tribe. "They're like Amos," thought Taharka. "They never give up." "Taharka, son of the sun, child of the hawk, lord of Cush." "Hurroo!" A little boy had ridden out from the Mukri camp on a silver-gray donkey. "Stop," said Taharka to the charioteer. The little boy rode up close. He looked earnestly into the face of the god. He even rested his hand on the wheel of the sacred chariot. On this strange day the soldiers were hardly surprised. "Are you really a king, Haru?" Taharka nodded. "I knew it. I always knew you were a prince. You're a prince too, Sabi. Some day you'll be a chief. He'll be a good chief," he thought. "He'll be a good man. Take good care of Hermes, I know, and never let him serve the Assyrians. And Sabi?" The horses were prancing, restless to be on their way. Taharka called back to the boy on the donkey, "Be kind to the stranger who comes to your well. Who knows? He might be a king."